Sunday morning, the 22nd of December, and nothing better than doing Sunday morning weather with time with the Coffee with Cioffi show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Sunday. Happy Hanukkah, 3 days before Christmas broadcast as we take a look at what's happening weather-wise today. I got to tell you, I'm actually quite enjoying this rather calm period that we have entered into. The weather's been busy pretty much since Thanksgiving. The breaks have been few and far between. And this is a perfect time to just kind of sit back and have a minimal amount of weather action going on. That's not to say that there isn't weather action going on. There is, and we're going to take a look at that. But from the standpoint of major storms, if you think back to Thanksgiving, we had a couple of stretches there, and also at the weekend, the weekend that followed Thanksgiving, with the major snowstorm that occurred for much of upstate New York and New England on December 1st and 2nd. That storm started out off the West Coast and impacted pretty much the entire country. But this time around, at least from the standpoint of the weather action that we've had for the middle part of December, that's kind of gone away, and there's nothing major going on. But the calm period will eventually come to an end. I think what we've seen is since the middle of the middle of October, when you think back to Hurricane Lorenzo kicking off a wholesale pattern change across the northern hemisphere, and we seem to be in this weather pattern that is, I would say, probably 3 weeks on and a week to 10 days off. So for you go through a 3-week period of colder than average temperatures and storminess, and then about a week to 10 days where the weather doesn't really do much of anything, at least as far as the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic states are concerned. So let's take a look at what's happening this morning. We have a few things going on in the Southeast and Florida. That really is where much of the action is happening today. By the way, big hellos to everybody that joined on board this morning, getting up on a Sunday. Oh, Okie AG is on. Haven't seen Okie in a while. And we've got, of course, Chuck and Tim and Scott and Bill and Elizabeth, Robert, Stephen is here. They're all on the chat board. So if you're new, David Schwartz, Scott Briller, as we said, the chairman, is on this morning. If you're new to the channel, you're welcome to join in on the conversation and the chat, because I actually have a separate screen where I can monitor all of this. So looking at watches and warnings across the U.S., there really isn't a whole lot happening from that standpoint. We're seeing some flood watches up for southeastern Georgia and the southern half of South Carolina. That's where all the rain is concentrated today, and that's where the heaviest rain is going to be. The state of Florida is also going to get into some of that rain, and there's actually some severe weather risk today for South Florida, and we're going to look at that in a moment. Out in the west, we do have various winter weather advisories up for the Sierra Nevadas, and then on up northward through the mountains of Oregon. But you got to understand that here, the winter weather advisories can be for 2 to 3 feet of snow, so their threshold of pain is high. Some fog issues this morning through parts of North Texas, Northeast Texas, up through Oklahoma and into southeastern Kansas and western Missouri. And then that's really about it. The rest of the nation, as I said, going into this long holiday week, is on the quiet side, and that certainly is a good thing. Now, as far as rainfall is concerned, I've got WPC's rainfall forecast map, and the next 5 days producing 5-inch plus rainfalls for South Carolina, coastal Georgia, and offshore, but every bit of several inches going back pretty far inland and west there, and of course down through Florida, anywhere from 1.5 inches to as much as some 2 and 3 inch amounts in South Florida, which are going to be induced by thunderstorms. In the meantime, up the west coast, from Southern California all the way up to from San Diego to Seattle, we're seeing quite a bit of rain being forecast here too, on the order of 1.5 inches to some 3 inch plus rain amounts in Southern California near the coast, and also up in the Pacific Northwest. Otherwise, we're still dealing with pretty dry conditions. If WPC is right, it will be rain-free all week or snow-free for that matter, for much of the Northeast down into the northern mid-Atlantic states. The 1/100th to 1/10 of an inch is at the Virginia, North Carolina state line. So this is all coming from, by the way, this southern stream system that is moving out will move off the southeast coast over the next couple of days. Now, if we add the 7-day outlook, we can start to throw in some precip across Oklahoma and Texas, the southern plains, to the middle Mississippi Valley and into the Ohio Valley on the order of 1 to 2 inches. And this is going to start the next active period. We've been, again, in that sort of 2 to 3 weeks on, week to 10 days off. And once the week to 10 days off pattern where it finishes out later this week, I think we go into a stretch where we're going to be colder than average for the most part and stormier than average. Now, what that means specifically in the longer term, I don't know, but this is where it seems to be going this winter. That, you remember, I always say about weather systems don't repeat exactly, but they do rhyme. And in the wintertime, oftentimes whatever pattern that sets up has a rhyming feel to it. And I think that's where we're going with all of this. The Storm Prediction Center is looking at South Florida as a risk for severe weather. Cut the state maybe right across the middle, just south of Orlando, and you've got a marginal to slight risk of severe weather being indicated there. And that's it as far as severe weather is concerned. And by the way, just going back to rainfall, we saw what WPC is doing, but this is the rain forecast from the various Weather Service offices, and we've got some pretty hefty amounts being indicated in and around Charleston, up to 10 inches of rain, perhaps, according to the forecasters, the local forecasters that are out there. But they're going for every bit of 6 inches plus rainfall in this area here in South Carolina. And throughout much of Georgia, it's a 2 to 3 inch rainfall back through Alabama, southern parts of North Carolina. And then you see the rains tail off as we head up to the north. I think we'll take a look also at the prospects for snow out in the west and see what that brings us. This is for the forecast period taking us through Christmas Day, Christmas morning anyway. And again, you see the bigger amounts in the Sierra Nevadas, of course, but most of the snowfalls that we are seeing out in the west are in the, let's say, 1 to 4 inch range, and look pretty reasonable. A few higher pockets of 6 to 12 plus in some of the mountains, but that is just about it. And through Wednesday in the northeast, except for a coating to an inch in a small portion of the eastern part of Maine, it is very, very quiet indeed. So weather-wise, we are not really seeing a whole lot going on in the Northeast as far as temperatures are concerned, and as far as sky conditions are concerned. It's actually quite nice today. We are going to finally see readings climb up out of the 30s and into the 40s, although as of 10 a.m., it's still pretty cold in upstate New York. And in New England, the temperatures there rebounding into the teens and 20s, and we're into the 30s everywhere else. It actually got fairly cold, and it still is fairly cold across North Carolina this morning, where we're in the low 30s, and just to the south of that is where the rain is, and of course temperatures here are in the low 40s. I mean, we're talking an absolutely miserable weather day here across the southeastern part of the United States. Temperatures, except in southernmost Georgia, and in the Florida Panhandle, we're in the mid 50s to low 60s. Everywhere else, and throughout much of northern Alabama as well, into South Carolina, we're looking at really raw conditions today with some heavy rains. Warms up a bit. The east to southeast flow across central and south Florida, where temperatures are in the upper 60s to middle 70s. And of course, they're setting the table up for some severe weather there. And here it is on the satellite loop this morning, where we've got the distinct southern part of this jet stream just staying completely separate from the northern stream, and everything just is moving right along with low pressure that is in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. And this system normally would be a problem, or at least a risk, of coming up the eastern seaboard, but you've got a couple of things here that are just not working. One is you've got a trough down in the western part of the United States. You also have a northern part of the jet stream that is real, just kind of on the weak side. It's a straight west to east flow. There's maybe a very weak little shortwave moving across north of the northernmost Great Lakes, but it doesn't extend anywhere far enough south to pick up that low to the south. You notice there's a lot of dry air that is in between the northern part of the jet stream and the active southern part. Now, this is all, really pretty much all solid dry air that is sitting and not really moving very much. There's nothing that is causing that drier air to retreat, and that area to the south with the southern part of the jet stream to turn up the East Coast, and that is just sometimes that's what happens. And even though this is a very vigorous system, there's no lift to move it northward, so it gets kicked straight to the east. And meanwhile, we sit inside. Much of the U.S. is sitting inside that banana of dry air that runs from Texas northeastward up through the Great Lakes and across into the Northeast. And by the way, this is the fog that shows up pretty well on the satellite loop here. You can see it there when it goes to the visible. So that's the fog that we're talking about in Texas. So other than that, it's good. No major storms. It's just you're used to having at least one part of the country being hit fairly hard, I guess today it's really the southeastern in terms of rainfall. Given the wintertime, you would expect to see at least a fair amount of winter storm warnings or winter storm watches up somewhere, but it is darn quiet. Now here's the radar this morning. Loaded with rain in Georgia, in Alabama, back through Mississippi, down into Florida, off the Georgia coast and into South Carolina. But it cuts off very sharply from there, and there is nothing of consequence going on across the Northeast, except for that little bit of snow in eastern Maine that's going to leave about a coating to an inch. And then the other area that we're looking at in terms of precip is out in the west, where we've got this heavy rain that is coming in up and down the coast of California, not quite down to Southern California. It looks like most of it is north of LA, but it is a fairly sizable arm of rain that extends up to about the Oregon border. A little bit of shower activity up in Washington State, and excuse me, and that's about it. So the surface map has low pressure in the northeastern Gulf of Mexico. With the, excuse me, sorry about that. You can see I still have this lingering head cold, but low pressure in the northeastern Gulf, a frontal boundary that runs across North Florida and then up the coast off the Carolinas, and then you have high pressure to the north, and the air is, not really all that cold. We continue to see this sort of slow moderation, and then that moderation is going to continue into Monday. And as we look out to the west, You've got this low that's coming into California, north of San Francisco, that's bringing the rains there. But that really is about it. The very cold air is way up in Canada, and I mean way up, because if you look across southern Canada here, you've got temperatures that for this time of the year are not really all that cold. We're in the teens and low 20s, when we could certainly have minus signs in front of these numbers, but we're not seeing it at the moment. We have talked about the fact that the Canadian connection with respect to the overall weather pattern is kind of lacking. That's not unusual, by the way. It does happen from time to time during the course of a winter that you get cold air to shut off for a little bit. We've seen a very cold stretch overall from mid-October to just the last few days in the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states. It's been in other areas, but it seems to have been concentrated up in New England and down into the Northern Mid-Atlantic. When you look at some of the temperatures, the average temperatures over the last couple of months, they have been running below average and in a pretty solid downtrend. But right now, again, that sort of relaxation period. But even here in this relaxation period, the warm-up is nothing really to write home about. So there's our low off the south, moving into the southeast, and the new NAM model is out, and that northern progress of the rain makes it to about southwestern Virginia briefly. You got that heavy rain, and here's where the NAM sees these heavy downpours and thunderstorms during tonight into tomorrow morning across South Florida, and heavy rains up into the Carolinas, where the low center is forecast to be close to Charleston, and then just kind of rotates its way out to the east and southeast and dies off. And in the meantime, while that is all happening, we are going to see a warmer day, a nice day today in the northern mid-Atlantic, northeast, and back through the Great Lakes. And then Monday, we're going to warm up a bit on a northwest wind, waiting for a weak cold front to come on through here. And this is the surface map for early Tuesday morning, where we have a cold front, a weak cold front. There's nothing with it. There's a high up to the north, kind of a backdoorish type of high that is going to bring down a little bit of cooler air for Tuesday into Wednesday. The coldest air stays up to the north in Canada, and it's not really, it's still going to be temperatures that are going to be running above average. So, it's not an Arctic blast or anything like that. And it still keeps weather conditions relatively calm here going into Christmas Eve, with the high to the north. I think we're going to see temperatures up into the upper 40s and low 50s over many areas of the southern areas of the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states tomorrow. But then we're going to cool off somewhat on Tuesday and Wednesday with that high to the north and a northeast wind. But the weather overall should still be pretty nice. You're seeing the NAM produce a little bit of snow shower activity up in the northern lakes, and that is about it. And in fact, when we take a look nationwide on the next couple of days, there is a glaring absence of any kind of significant weather, really, other than what happens on Monday once the rain gets out of the southeast. So here's the GFS on the surface map for today, setting up the situations in both the east and the southeast and the west. Just hang on one second, folks. Jason, there's no freezing rain with this. You go from clear skies, Jason Schaefer. If you look at the satellite loop, I guess if we go back far enough during the overnight, the cold in the Carolinas, clear skies, light winds, and then it clouds right over. The temperatures jump right away above freezing, and the rain isn't anywhere close to where temperatures are still hovering in the upper 20s and low 30s. There's probably a little bit of a wedge factor going on minimally into southern Virginia and interior North Carolina, but that really is about it. It's the cold air, the coldest air actually went out offshore on Friday night, Saturday, and there wasn't really a lot of cold air that was wedged back down into the southeast. It was minimal. So running along again, that southeast storm goes out. You go into Christmas Eve. This is at 7 o'clock in the evening on Tuesday. You've got some rain and snow in the southwest and just off the west coast coming in, but everywhere else it's quiet. And Christmas Day, we're looking at relatively quiet conditions. About the only place that you'll see snow is in the southwestern quarter of the U.S., and there's a low there sitting off the coast of California, bringing some rains into Southern California. And that's it. So if you've got traveling to do over the next couple of days, unless you're headed down to the southeast or Florida today into tomorrow, you should be fine. And if you're not going to, one of the things that I think the big plus in all of this is the fact that with the holidays the way they are and the traveling, weather can be so problematic in getting to and from wherever your destination is. So to have minimal inconvenience from the standpoint of weather is concerned, I think is a good thing. So once we get through Christmas, after that, as we go to the end of the week, we're going to start to see activity pick up again. We've got a low, I think, that's going to run up toward the Great Lakes. This low is going to this is going to be another one of those lows. And we've seen this several times here in this let's call it 2 to 3 week on, 1 week off type pattern that we've been in, that when the active period begins, it is kicked off by a strong low that heads up towards the Great Lakes and southeastern Canada. We've seen that happen a couple of times, and I think we're going to see it happen again as we go into next weekend. So this is where we could wind up with our first weather system that produces a bit more in the way of widespread winter weather across the plains and into the western lakes. And it'll be wet weather in the east with a cold front because there's not going to be a whole lot of cold air. There is going to be cold air coming in behind this, though. And that low is heads up into eastern Canada. And we are seeing weather models having a real tough time lately, kind of figuring out where this is all going to go. And I think you're going to continue to see that tough time going forward. The one thing the model runs have been showing is a colder look as we head through the first part of the month of January. There's a cold front here, for example. Let me just run back. So we get this low that moves through December 29th and 30th. With a cold front and some cold air. There's a second front that comes through on January 2nd on last night's GFS run, and some hints that there could be some low developments that may or may not produce some snow for somebody. But the overall pattern does look a lot busier as we head into the new year. And I think somewhere along the way there are going to be snow opportunities, of course, for the areas in the Northeast, outside of, say, from New York City south, where it's been the snow issues have not been any big deal for upstate New York and for interior New England, and really not that far interior New England is where it starts. This has been a very active November-December timeframe. I think we are going to see a busier pattern, and it is going to be one with chances for snow. So I would take a look at the upper air. And every day we kind of see the same idea here, where we have this relaxed pattern, and you'll notice, so this is for Monday, for tomorrow. And one of the things when you look at the jet stream here is the fact that there is no real flow coming down from northern Canada. It's pretty much straight west to east. There's your trough in the west. Here is your vigorous southern system. One of the things I find very interesting here in the overall pattern that we've had is the fact that we've seen this split flow that has continued with a fairly active southern part of the jet stream that started back weeks and weeks ago. and shows no signs of coming to an end. So that southern stream could very well be important down the road, depending on what the northern stream does and what happens in terms of timing. So, this whole week, again, very relaxed. You start to see one of the reasons why we're not warming up in a big way. Take a look at the area off of Newfoundland. You do have we do actually have a negative NAO in play that is going to stay mostly negative through this forecast stretch. And right here in this area, we are seeing some lower pressures hanging back. It's generally lower pressures out across the Atlantic and the North Atlantic, north of 40 degrees north, and say south of 65 degrees north. So that is a good, that is where you look for lower than normal pressures to produce a negative NAO. And because that is sort of sitting there, there's a bit of there's a flow that hangs back across New England, and that effectively keeps things from getting warm here. And you'll see it here, that upper low east of Newfoundland really doesn't move very much as we go through this week. And you, again, by the time we get to Thursday, right in here, there's a little bit of a northwest flow coming down out of Canada. If it wasn't for that, you would see the ridge would go all the way up, okay? And I mean, we would really be very warm up and down the eastern seaboard, were it not for the fact that you've got, this negative NAO at work because of low pressure east of Newfoundland, moving very, very slowly out across the Atlantic. And it takes its real sweet time there, just sort of rotates around. Now, eventually, it will give way as the next trough starts to swing in from the west next weekend. And it's really right after that you start to see there is a Canadian connection that starts to come back. And that will be bringing down the cold air. We also still have a bit of energy in the southern part of the jet stream. Alters a little bit from what the flow has been, but there's still something there, and some of that energy may eventually come into play and move inland. But again, the first part of the new year to me looks like it will be active and colder. Specifics I couldn't begin to tell you, but definitely this relaxation period that we're in is going to be somewhat temporary. Just going to see if the new teleconnection snapshots from ERSL are in, and they are. And you can see off the 0Z run a couple of things. First off, that PNA index is somewhat negative. Anything over minus 200 or plus 200 would be a strong reading. And if you start to get into the 300, 400 zones, we're talking about off-the-wall stuff. So on this particular run, and remember, it's a snapshot of the model run that it's taken from. These are ensembles. You're going from, so it could very well change if the models change a bit down the road, but you're going from negative on the PNA, the Pacific North America Index, to slightly positive to somewhat negative toward the end of the forecast period. The NAO is strongly negative into next week, shoots up to the neutral zone around the 29th, 30th. So that could be your system in the Great Lakes when it goes from, you get these big changes that go from negative to neutral to positive over a short period of time. Usually at the point that it approaches the neutral line, there's some kind of low somewhere, and that could be what that is. You're talking about these indices are actually telegraphing major pressure changes over certain geographic areas. And the East Pacific Oscillation, the EPO, which is weekly to somewhat positive going into the end of the year, which is usually a warmish pattern in the east, goes back to neutral and then goes very slightly negative in the first days of the new year. So it's the strong negative NAO that's keeping if it weren't for that, as I said, we'd warm up because of the East Pacific Oscillation being positive like this. That would favor warmer temperatures in the eastern part of the United States. I mean, way above normal instead of being just somewhat above normal or slightly above normal. And again, that NAO being strongly negative going into Christmas, and we saw that the map, the upper low east of Newfoundland, keeping that colder flow from eastern Canada and Greenland and bleeding some of that cold air down. It will keep temperatures in check in the Northeast and into the northern mid-Atlantic states. So that really pretty much covers it weather-wise here. I don't have any pearls of wisdom with regards to the long range. My regulars know that I seldom do have pearls of wisdom with respect to the long range. And so, I mean, that's really about it from the standpoint of what's going on weather-wise. I just watched, by the way, this is a time of year you see a lot of, if you have, you should all have Turner Classic Movies. If not, then we need to right this wrong. I really like watching TCM because I'm an old movie buff. I would much rather sit down and watch an old black and white movie than watch some of the crap that's produced today. And I just watched a movie I had never seen with Cary Grant and Betsy Drake called Room for One More. It was a very touching movie about a family of three, and they adopt two. They take in two foster children, and one older foster children. One has depression issues, and another one has disability issues. And it's such a well done movie. It's done in the flavor of movies that were done in the late 40s and low 50s. You have to sort of accept a certain I don't want to say sappiness to it because that would be that's not the right word, but they do have that sort of it's going to end happy and the happy ending type of thing, and which is fine. It's Christmas and you want to have that good feeling, but it's a movie if you have never seen all the standard Christmas movies. It's a Wonderful Life. Of course, and A Christmas Carol, the Reginald Owen version, the Alistair Sim version. Alistair Sim version is considered to be one of probably the best one. Reginald Owen. I like the Reginald Owen version, if only because of the fact that Gene Lockhart is in that, and so is his wife. And his daughter, June Lockhart, who is for those of you who are Lost in Space fans, was Maureen Robinson on Lost in Space, and she was very young. She played one of the daughters there, one of I'm sorry, I'm losing it here. I'm having a senior moment. But she played one of the children, and she's in her 90s now, so it's amazing to see that. And Gene Lockhart is a wonderful character actor. He shows up in so many movies in the 40s and 50s. So I love watching a lot of this. And there's a lot of other lesser known Christmas movies that are just wonderful to watch this time of year. There's The Bishop's Wife with David Niven and Loretta Young and Cary Grant, which is it's a very cool movie to watch. And Monty Woolley is in that movie. I love Monty Woolley. He's a wonderful actor from the 30s and 40s. Mainly did Broadway stuff, but he did do a few movies where he shows up as a supporting in a supporting role, and he's just very, very funny. And I'm just trying to think of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, with also with Monty Woolley, Betty Davis, Mary Wicks, a whole host of actors in there. and that's kind of like a madcap. Billy Burke is in it from The Wizard of Oz, The Good Witch of the North. But that's a sort of a madcap comedy, and it's hilarious and very sharply, very well written and just really sharp in terms of the dialogue. So just throwing out a few recommendations for other films that you can see this time of year. So, Dan Fitzsimmons, the Angry Ben's app for the iPhone will be available as soon as it gets done. It's a very frustrating process to deal with Apple. They are tough to get app approvals. They nitpick on everything. So we've been kind of going back and forth with them trying to fix the technical issues. So hopefully that will be taken care of and we get it done between now and January. We'll see. Let's see. Did I hear about Music Man with Hugh Jackman kicking Beetlejuice out of a Broadway theater next summer? Yeah, that kind of, might be. That happens all the time. I mean, shows run their course, and they, old shows and new shows begin. There's only so many theaters on Broadway. So, but plus, I think the Beetlejuice has been running for quite a while. Cats is back. I have absolutely no interest in seeing it whatsoever. The movie version. I actually sat through the Broadway version many years ago, and it was the longest 8 hours of my life, and that was just the first act. It was it's just not my kind of movie. I like musicals, but they have to have a story behind them. Okay, if there's no story behind them, I mean, I just did not. I had absolutely no interest in it. In there's got to be some sort of redeeming character that you can focus your attention on, and to me, it's not there. I know people raved about it, and I was like, I'm not getting this. Okay. So, and I don't go to the movies very often either. As I said from the get go, I would much rather sit in front of a television with Turner Classic Movies on and watching an old movie, an old black and white, rather than going out to the theaters. So let's. Scott got your first Hanukkah present from your mother, which was a monogrammed cap saying the chairman. Oh, very cool. That's very nice. I hope everybody's been very good this year for the various holidays for Hanukkah and for Christmas. Yes, Elizabeth Harrison. I did say Betsy. Betsy Drake is the actress in that movie Room for One More, which I watched this morning on Turner Classic, and that's really about it. I really I hope everybody has a great holiday here for Hanukkah and for Christmas. This is really a time of year, in my view, that you just have to kind of sit back and take a deep breath and, relax, get away from the phone and the rushing around and at least find some downtime. I've been really taking advantage of this this calm stretch of weather because when it gets busy weather-wise, I'm busy pretty much all day long. So I've kind of cut it back in terms of live streams and everything else. And I advise that take a back seat. There's nothing going on for most of you who watch. You're in the Northeast and then down in the Mid-Atlantic states. Your weather is calm and quiet. Enjoy the great weather. Enjoy the time with your families. Enjoy the easy travel. And by the way, not a lecture here, just a suggestion, but take a moment or two to maybe show a little bit of kindness to someone you don't know. And do it, as I often say, you do it silently. Don't do it for credit. Don't do it for recognition. You do something good for someone and you walk away. And you leave it between yourself and your maker. And that's a good thing, okay? So here's what I'm going to do for the next couple of days. So tomorrow is Monday. I would say let's take. I don't see anything pressing to do weather-wise tomorrow, so we're going to take a break. Tuesday morning, maybe I'll sneak a quick live stream Tuesday morning just to recap what's going on and wish everybody a merry. And then Christmas Day, perhaps Christmas night in the evening sometime. We'll jump on and do a live stream. That'd be by that time, a lot of folks are kind of burned out. So, they think that and they need some mode of escape. So I will try and do that for Christmas night. So we'll leave it at that. Nothing going on for tomorrow. Tuesday morning, we'll jump real quick. We'll do a quick Tuesday morning coffee with Cioffi, and then maybe come back sometime on Wednesday night. So happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas. My Patreon members, same thing. There's not much weather there, so kind of easing back just a little bit. And the app users, the app's going to get updated once a day until we get past Christmas Day, and we'll leave it at that. All right. So have a good one, and enjoy your Sunday, and enjoy your football, because football is winding down now as well. See if the Giants can manage to do something. I doubt it, but we'll see. All right. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you on Tuesday morning, Christmas Eve.